What's happening, fishing friends? Hopefully you were able to spend time with friends and family over the holidays. I hope you all had good holidays out there. Unfortunately, 2018 is coming to an end, but I thought what better time than to go over my top 5 favorite baits from 2018. So the first bait is something that I've worked with a lot over the past few years, and that happens to be the Lipless Crankbait. I'm not gonna lie, my all-time favorite bait to start out with in the spring traditionally has been a spinnerbait. It's one of my confidence baits. But each year I pick out 1 or 2 different lures or techniques and try and get better with them. You might have 2 or 3 lures you're really confident with, but in a certain lake or a certain time of year, those lures might not be the best choices. So I think that's important for beginners out there is to pick a new lure each year. And I'm going to kind of touch on that as I go over these 5 baits. Kind of where I fished them, how I fished them, just a brief breakdown on the colors. Each year pick 1 or 2 lures and gain some confidence with them. So the Lipless Crankbait, it is really hard to argue the success that people have with Lipless Crankbaits. You know, in the spring, those fish are moving out from those deep areas, coming in to feed to those main points, secondary points, and eventually back in the shallows to spawn. And the Lipless Crankbait is great because it can mimic their food sources: shad, bluegill, even crawfish. When it comes to colors, I've kept Lipless pretty simple. My number 1 favorite color to throw around here, slightly stained water, has been a sexy shad color. In fact, this bait right here, this is a Cotton Cordell Super Spot, sexy shad, little 1/4 ounce. I put some aftermarket hooks on there. That caught my second largest fish this year, just under 6.5 pounds, this little Lipless. There's a fish. Oh my goodness, that's a good fish. Oh my gosh, that is a PB whole beef. Oh my gosh, look at that thing. So the Super Spot's a great choice. They're very affordable. I think like $1.99 at Walmart. I bought a bunch of these. You can also go with the Strike King Red Eye Shad. People love these. It's a staple. A little bit more expensive, but they work very well. When it's a little sunnier out, these chrome colors work great. It gives off a lot of flash, gives them something to target in on. This is a Bill Lewis rattle trap, or you could go with a little tiny version. That was killer this year for crappie, so that chrome color in the sun does great. And I even ventured over into the red Lipless Crankbait this year. This spring, Randizzle and I were out a couple days. This was killer. They were smacking this all around. Didn't really give it a chance before, but I tell you what, I will be throwing more of these red and brown colors this year in the spring to mimic crawfish. The Lipless has been great for me around here because you can fish it along grass lines, you can fish it just over the top of grass and pop it out of there. Now, if you've got a lake like I do with a bunch of riprap banks, throw that Lipless in there and try to bang it off of as many rocks as you can in the shallows. Those fish are up there feeding. They're going to be looking for crawfish or bait fish hiding up in there. The Lipless has been killer in those sort of areas for me. Now, this second lure on my list is one of the best ways to mimic bait fish. You know, in the spring, the bass are done spawning. The bluegill, the shad, they're looking to move up and spawn too. And at that time, small bait fish like that are one of the top menu items for big bass. The thing that makes the paddle tail swim bait so nice is there are so many different shapes and sizes you can really mimic and match the hatch in your area. In the spring, I've had tremendous luck starting with something a little bit smaller like this. You could go with a little 3.75 inch, a little Rage Swimmer, or a Swing Impact Kitech, little 4-inch. They also make the Fat Impact Kitech this size too. 2 great baits that work. I like throwing them on a little underspin like this. This is the Cumberland, a little bit cheaper than something like a fish head. So if you're looking to try out some underspins, I would recommend these. They work well for me. That little small profile, if you've got smaller bait fish in your area, something like that, a little guy like those, they're hard to beat, especially in a little clearer water. Now, if you have larger bait fish in your area or you're looking to get a little bit bigger bite, you could go up to something like this. This is the Beast Coast Miyagi. I'm a huge fan of these. The largest bass that I caught this year was on this exact rig right here. 6.9 large jaw. I'm a fan. So when it comes to size, try to match the hatch around your area. And when it comes to colors, I keep it simple. I'm either going with a bluegill color like this or like this, just depending on what size you want. A bluegill color or that shad color. Match the color. They're killer in the spring. I'm surprised when I talk to people about paddle tail swim baits. I often hear people say, well, I don't know how to fish them or where to throw them. I just don't get bit on them, so I throw something I'm more confident in. Well, don't treat these any different than you would your normal surge baits. Throwing them around high percentage areas, so structure, you know, rocky drop-offs, rocky points, they work great there. Or pieces of cover, you know, big wood laydowns, grass lines, anywhere you would fish a normal, you know, spinnerbait, chatterbait. You know, you throw on a little belly-weighted hook like this, you can fish these over around really anything. Very, very versatile. Now, the other nice thing about keeping paddle tail swim baits like this around is that they make great trailers. And that brings us to bait number 3. So if you've followed my channel for any amount of time, it's probably no surprise that that third bait is a swim jig. Now this is on the list because of its sheer ability to catch fish. Man, I really made it a point to focus on the swim jig this year. I was already confident with a chatterbait, a spinnerbait, but this is one that I really only threw in clear water situations, and I've had a few people say that this thing is killer in more than just that. And I'm glad I put in more time with it and used it in more spots than just clear water, because I was wrong. This thing absolutely produces in all types of water. This is a great way to switch over if you're already confident with something like a chatterbait, but they're not hitting something as big as loud. You can go to something like this, a little bit more finessey of a presentation, but you can still switch up what kind of action it has. You can go with a little swing impact like that to mimic a bait fish. You can go with something like this, a Rage Menace, to give it a little bit more thump and kick and back, a little bit more action. There's a lot of different ways you can rig it, even, just a little paddle tail like that. A lot of different ways you can use it and rig it to make a different look. Now, when it comes to colors with the swim jig, again, I'm keeping it simple. I'm going with a white shad color or more of a translucent shad color in the clear waters. Shad, I'm trying to mimic that bait fish, or of course, a bluegill. I'm going with a bluegill color. Those are the two main forage that I'm trying to mimic when I'm throwing a swim jig. I'm also excited to try something like this. This is the 6th Sense Divine swim jig. I've had a bunch of people recommend this. Finally picked up a couple. Yeah, and it's no lie. These things look sweet. They've got a really good hook on them, good screw lock, beautiful colors. So I'm excited to try those. Now, you've heard and seen me talk about this one. That again is that all-terrain tackle swim jig. You can see the head there. It's pointed like a bullet. Now, it's not that 45 degree that I talk about, but it's got a recessed line eye right here where you would normally put your line on there. It's got a good bullet-shaped head, and this is one of the best lures I have found that comes through grass. So chatterbaits are great through coming through grass. You can rip them, but sometimes it's just a little bit much. That blade still picks up stuff. If you switch over to something like this, when it's really grassy, really thick, I tell you what, your life will be easier. But speaking about those thick summer vegetation times, if you're not fishing something through the water in the vegetation, what about on top of the water? Again, it's probably no surprise if you follow my channel, bait number 4, of course, is a frog. My favorite way to catch fish by far is on a frog. The blow-ups that you get on these things will absolutely get your heart pumping.
Insane.
Oh, and you're generally going to catch a better average on a topwater frog like this than you would with something like a finesse bait. The thing that makes a frog like this so awesome is that they can go anywhere. In the summer, when you've got a bunch of moss and scum, really thick vegetation, you can either fish inside of it or you can fish on top of it. And for me, there's no better way to do that than with a frog.
Oh my gosh! Wow, that almost pulled the rod out of my hand.
There's a bunch of different frog types. You can go with something like this where it's really thick vegetation. You just want that pointy nose to get through. Or if you're fishing sparse vegetation, you want to give it a little pop, you can go with a popping frog. So there's different types out there. Now, when it comes to colors, I keep it simple. I'll go with a white belly like this, something natural if I'm trying to mimic, some bait fish up on the top, or if they're going to get a little bit better look at it. Now, in the low light situations, I like to go with a dark color, usually black. I got a couple brown ones like this to try this year, but a dark color to create that silhouette. When those fish are looking up and it's real low light, I just want to give them a shadow, a black shadow to focus in on a target. That's why I like a dark color. Now, a lure for me that was really fun this year was this, the Teckle Sprinkler Frog. There's also the Booyah Toad Runner, I believe it's called, but these are really fun to fish because they're just cast and retrieve. Now, they don't work as well on the really thick stuff because, stuff gets stuck in here and it kind of kills the whole point of this lure. But if you're fishing sparse vegetation, grass lines, weed lines, and you're going to be kind of in a mix of stuff, you need to come over pads. Something like this is awesome. You can't fish a Whopper, Plopper, or a Spook because, the trebles are going to be getting caught up. So this is a great alternative. And I had great success on these. I really, really like the Teckle Sprinkler Frog. Going to be fishing that more next year as well. Man, I'm already thinking of those early summer mornings, late evenings when the topwater and frog bite is just killer. It's my favorite way to catch fish. But during those summer months, that bite can get tough. And when the sun's high up overhead, you have to go finesse. And that's going to take me to number 5. Let's talk about the weighted Wacky Rig. Yeah, in those hot summer months, anglers often reach for their favorite finesse technique. Now, that might be something like a weightless stick bait, drop shot, shaky head, whatever it is that you have confidence in. For me this year, it was this little weighted Wacky Rig. And the rig is really nothing more than this. It starts out with your little weighted Wacky hook, just like that right there. I got a bunch of these from Bass Pro Shops when they were on sale. 1/16 is my favorite size to start with. And from there, you add on your favorite soft plastic of choice. So you could start out with something like a stick bait, or you could go over to something like this, a little thinner, longer style worm, a trick worm style. You've often heard about the flick shake, and that's all that is a worm like this on a little weighted Wacky hook, a flick shake rig. Or you could go over to a ring style bait like this. This is the Lake Fork Ring Fry. These were great. I fished these a long time, but you can see that body is a little bit thick. And for me, when I fish these, I'm always fishing them with O-rings. It was just really hard to get these in the Wacky tool. So I found these. These are the Grande Bass Rattlesnakes, 4.75 inch. Since I found these are by far my favorite bait to throw on a weighted Wacky Rig. They work. You can see that tail is tapered there. It goes right down in the Wacky tool. You always want to make sure you rig these with the 2 O-rings. I've talked about that in my previous videos. Use the O-rings that cross in the middle, run your hook in between them, and you're gonna save a ton more baits. If you put the hook directly into the meat of this body, you can see the meat in there is actually really small. The actual lure is tiny in the middle. So if you're putting your hook directly into that, 1 or 2 fish, and you're gonna rip these in half all the time. So I highly recommend the 2 O-rings. It'll save you a bunch of baits. So I have people ask me, well, why not just go with a weightless wacky stick bait? Those work, right? And they do. They're absolute fish catchers, but I like to switch up the presentation and go with something that the fish haven't seen. This ring style bait for me absolutely flat out gets bit. I also like going with a little bit heavier lure like this because I can cover more water. You're throwing out a weightless stick bait, you're waiting for it to sink, popping it, waiting for it. You can cover more water with this. It's still a very slim, no action bait, very non-intrusive. Fish will eat it, and it falls a little bit quicker so you can fish it faster in different spots. It's like a power finesse fishing technique, kinda. So if you're a beginner out there looking to pick one of these up and fish it, I'm fishing it the same way I would with the weightless stick bait. I'm letting it fall down, I'm giving it pop, pop, pop. Fall down, pop, pop, pop. It's a non-threatening, really just do nothing bait with it, let it fall, and that fall, that non-threatening action is what gets fish to bite it. This rig skips well, so you can skip this under docks, around brush. I like to use the weedless version of these little hooks. Now they're not, obviously totally weedless. If you throw these around brush, you're still gonna get stuck, but it does help keep a little bit of that grass and some wood off of it. Now when it comes to colors in these, I keep it simple. I'll go with a watermelon red flake for clear water, the green pumpkin for anything in between, and if you just wanted one color to go with, I would go with the green pumpkin. And if it's dirty, pretty stained water, I will go with the black and blue. That's it, those 3 colors. So that's it, you've heard my top 5 baits from 2018, the lipless, the paddle tail, the swim jig, the frog, and the weighted wacky rig. But now I wanna hear from all of you, so please leave me your top 5 baits from 2018 below. I'm interested because I might find new things that I don't really have confidence in. And I'm gonna tell you ahead of time, drop shot is gonna be one of those for 2019. Zero confidence in that. I still think weight companies made up that rig to sell a bunch of weights. I'm kidding. I know it catches tons of fish. It's just not one of my confidence presentations. So I'm going to work on that a lot in 2019. But leave me your top 5 baits from this year below. I want to hear them. I love having conversations with all of you in the comments below about lures and different types. It's interesting to see the different type of confidence baits for different people. And that brings me to all of you. I cannot thank all of you fishing friends out there enough for the amount of support that I've got through 2018. My channel's done more than I thought I ever could do. And that's all because of all of you. Without all of you, any fishing channel or any channel on YouTube would be useless without the support of people like you. And that's not just for me. Any YouTube content creator out there is nothing without subscribers and viewers just like you. So go out and support your favorite channels. Even if you're not a big fan of mine, go watch the other people, Alex Rudd, Tactical Bassin, Fluke Master, SB Fishing. I mean, there's a ton of them out there that have amazing content. Support those guys. It means so much to people like me and them to have supporters and subscribers like that. It's important. So that's it. It's late for me. I've got to get to bed. I'm excited for 2019 and I hope all of you are as well. So until next year.